Hello everybody, my name's Ryan with What Game Next, and today what we're going to be doing is exploring deck building in Marvel Champions LCG. I did one live stream this weekend where I looked at Spider-Man and I looked at some of the protection cards and just kind of went over the basics of how deck building works in general. Today I'm going to go a little bit deeper. I'm going to focus more on what She-Hulk's cards do, what the aggression cards do, and then I'm going to go into how you would build decks differently depending on if you're building for a solo type of a deck, or if you're building a deck where you're expecting to be playing with other people, and so therefore you could rely more on having certain effects available from other people that you're playing with, or whether you're truly solo and you're relying on only yourself. So there are certain cards that are just better when you have more people, and so that's what I'm going to be kind of getting into a little bit in this stream. So I guess that's what we're going to do, so I'm just going to get right into it. All right. So to start off with, to do the basic rundown on Marvel Champions, how deck building works, just from the basis, you start with a hero. The hero you pick is going to have 15 cards that are always included in the deck that you have to start with. So far, every hero has 15, even the ones that they've previewed for upcoming hero packs. We have Captain America and Miss Marvel coming up before the end of the year. Both of those so far have 15 hero cards in each of their packs. So as far as we know, going forward, every hero is going to have 15 cards minimum that they're going to be required to put in the deck. The decks are a minimum of 40 cards, and they can go up to 50 cards. So far, there should be no reason to go really above 40 cards. I imagine there will come a villain or a hero where the wisdom is, yes, you want a bigger deck because either they're going to be, the combination of either your hero and the villain are going to be churning through your deck so fast that you're going to start accumulating encounter cards too quickly, and so therefore you'll want more cards in your deck. Ultron kind of already does that by turning your cards in your deck into minions. That coupled with a hero that churns super fast through your deck could be a recipe for you to have a ton of encounter cards being dealt to you. But as it stands now, it's still probably better to just stick with 40. But I could see the possibility of a hero that self-mills coupled with a villain that mills you a lot as his primary mechanic, making it so that you would want to have more cards in your deck. Currently, though, 40 is where you want to go. So your hero's going to give you 15 cards to start. So you're going to be looking at 35 cards. The aspects each have 19 cards in them, except for currently leadership, which has 18 cards in it because it has an extra minion or an extra ally, not an extra minion. And that extra ally is unique, and so you can only have one of it in your deck. So there are less cards in leadership than there are in the other aspects. On top of that, you may not want to include every card from an aspect in your deck because of dilution or sticking to certain energy types or things like that. So that problem may become less of an issue as we get more hero packs out, because each hero pack is going to come with an additional card for each aspect, not counting the one that the hero is. So Captain America is a leadership hero. So he will have a fully customized deck with leadership cards in it that are brand new, along with a couple reprints, and then a brand new card for each of the other aspects that are not leadership. So as we get more cards in the pool, it could potentially become a thing where your entire deck is just your 15 cards for your base hero, plus every other card in your deck being from your aspect. Although I find it really hard to believe that people will not include the double energy cards, generic cards, even in that case, just because they're so good. But we're a ways off from getting there. We only have 2 hero packs scheduled out to the end of the year, and there's 4 aspects. So we're looking at probably March or April before we get heroes, at least 1 new hero for each aspect, and then some deluxe campaign box before we get even more cards to get to the point where we can even build a deck with just cards from a specific aspect in it. So to start off, we're just going to look at She-Hulk's cards. First card is, of course, the hero card itself. It has 2 sides. You have the alter ego side, which is the side you start on, and then you have your hero side. The alter ego side only has an ability that allows you to recover health currently. New heroes could potentially add other abilities. They could add new abilities to the game that we haven't seen yet. That would be cool. Currently there's only 4. There's recover, and then on the hero side we have thwart, attack, and defend. But her alter ego side has a single ability. It's an interrupt. When threat would be placed on a scheme, either the main scheme or a side scheme, she can object and prevent one of that threat, and it can only be used once per round. And then on her hero side, when she flips, she has another response type ability where she can deal 2 damage to an enemy. It could be either the main villain or one of the minions. And then she has 3 attack and 2 defense and 1 thwart. Thwart's obviously one of her weaknesses because she's a physical type of hero. She's getting in there and punching and defending mostly. However, on her alter ego side, and her basic cards give her some additional abilities to thwart. Some of them have a fairly high cost to them, like the very first card we're going to look at, which is Legal Practice. There's 2 of those in the deck. Legal Practice is an alter ego action, which means you can only use it when you're in your alter ego form. It's a thwart ability, and it allows you to choose and discard up to 5 cards from your hand, and you remove 1 thwart from a scheme for each card discarded this way. It's when you're in a pinch and the scheme is going to go off, it could save the day, but it is a very high cost, potentially throwing away a ton of cards to stop a scheme from advancing. I can see in certain niche times where it could be good, but I think most of the time it's going to be discarded for energy, and it does have a physical energy on it. Next up we have 1-2 punch. There's 3 of them. It's a response, and it's after you make a basic attack using your hero's attack, then you ready She-Hulk. This is very, 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 very good for one energy. Anything that allows you to ready your hero is very good. And with her already high attack of 3, being able to ready your hero to attack again to potentially do 6 damage in a turn for 1 energy is one of the highest damage output per energy effects in the entire game. Spider-Man has to pay 3 energy to get 8 damage. If you count his hero like attacking 2, then he's getting 10 for 3. 6 for 1 is ridiculous. It's very, very good. and it also has a physical resource on it. Then she has a singleton of Superhuman Law Division. It's another alter ego action. Thwart, exhaust Superhuman Law Division and spend a mental resource to remove 2 threat from a scheme. This is a support, so once you play it, it sits out in play, and every time she's an alter ego, she can use it. So it's repeatable thwarting, which is really good. Anytime you get a repeatable effect, it's really good. The problem is you have to spend a mental resource to do it. And she has 5 mental resources in her base cards. And depending on which aspect you choose, you could get access to some more mental resources. However, the fact that it requires a mental resource to use is going to be hard if you're not choosing an aspect that's going to give you a lot of those, and then of course neutrals that give you additional ones of those. But a lot of the neutrals that have mental resources on them are ones you're probably not going to want to throw away, like Avengers Mansion, just to thwart for 2. I think it's a hard card to use in general. Then we have Ground Slam. There's 2 of them. It deals 1 to each enemy as a hero action for 2 energy. In general, you're not going to use this very often. It does have a mental energy. You can use it for Superhuman Law Division. It's really good in scenarios like Ultron, where there's a bunch of drones out and they're all 1 health. She can Ground Slam and kill them all. It's a utility card, and it's good for that. It's a nice thing to have in her kit, but it's not groundbreaking or amazing or anything like that. It's just a solid card that you most of the time are going to be pitching for energy. Then she has 2 Superhuman Strength. It is a upgrade that sits in play for 2 energy. It gives her +2 attack, so it bumps her from 3 to 5. And it's a forced response, which means you have to use it the very first time it triggers. And it's after she attacks, you discard it, and you stun the attacked enemy. So you swing with her, she does 5 damage and a stun, and then the Superhuman Strength goes away. So you're paying 2 energy for 2 damage and a stun, which is better than a lot of cards at 2 damage or at 2 energy. The stun is super useful. If you can negate 3 to 4 damage from a villain, that's usually good for 2 energy. Then we have Focus Rage, which is another upgrade. It has a hero action on it. You exhaust it, you deal 1 damage to She-Hulk, and you draw a card. It's a repeatable card draw effect. She has 2 of them in her basic cards. They're not unique. They can both be out at the same time. It's really, really good. Any repeatable card draw effects like this are really, really good. Especially if you're playing in multiplayer and somebody can heal you, or you're playing protection and you have med teams or something like that, where you can heal yourself, or you're not that worried about damage and you eventually can get to Gamma Slam, which is the last card we'll look at. But repeatable card draw effects are great. She has a lot of supports and a lot of upgrades in her basic cards, which are good and bad. They thin out her deck, so you're drawing to the stuff you want to draw to, but it also makes it so you're getting through your deck faster if they're all out, which means you're getting encounter cards dealt to you quicker. Then we have Hellcat. This is her 1 unique ally. Each basic set kit for each of the 4 heroes in the core set has 1 unique ally for each hero, and this is hers. So Hellcat has an action that allows her to be returned to her hand. She costs 3. She has 2 thwart and 1 attack, both of which do an incidental damage, and she has 3 health. Why her action is interesting and why it's good is because returning to her hand effectively heals her. So you can use her twice, return her to your hand, and then replay her, and then she's healed again. And you can just keep doing that all game. Or if you just really need an energy and you don't mind losing your ally, you can always use the action to return her to your hand. And then she's a wild energy here in the corner. So you can then pitch her to play something else that you need. So you can effectively bank her on board for 3, and then later on pull her back to use her to pay for something else, which is really interesting. Then we have Split Personality. This card has been really good every single time I've played it. It costs 3. It has you change form. So you flip your identity card from the one you're on to the other one, and then you draw up to your printed hand size. So every time I've used this, I've been in She-Hulk form, where your hand size is normally 4. So you play Split Personality, you flip to your alter ego form, you draw 6 cards because that's your hand size in Jennifer Walters form, and now you have 6 cards to continue taking your turn on. And because you changed form with Split Personality, you still have your once per turn flip to change forms normally. So you can now flip back to She-Hulk, deal 2 damage, and have 6 cards to continue on the rest of your turn. Or if you want to stay in Jennifer Walters form, you can, but normally you switch back to She-Hulk, and now you continue the rest of your turn with 6 cards instead of the 4 you started with. And it's even better if you were able to play something else, because maybe some of the other cards you had in your hand were like double energies or something like that, so you didn't have to pitch all of your cards to play the Split Personality. If you could play something else and this in order to draw into the extra cards and then flip back, it ends up being a pretty big swing turn. And then her last card is Gamma Slam, which is a hero action. You have to be in She-Hulk form to use it. You deal X damage to an enemy to a maximum of 15, which is what her hit points is, where X is the amount of damage you have sustained. So you want to get right up to the line as much as you can, and then Gamma Slam, and then just do a ton of damage to the villain with it. I imagine it says to a max of 15 because there will be additional cards in the future that allow you to bump up your minimum or your maximum hit points by a few points. So if you did that, and probably in protection, and you had some weird deck that just stacked additional hit points again and again, then you could potentially like one-shot a villain by just taking a bunch of damage. So they capped it, which makes sense. It makes sense, but at the same time, it's a little disappointing that that's not a thing that you'll be able to do at some point. So, looking at all her basic cards, her basic cards give you 6 physical resources. It gives you 5 mental resources. It gives you 3 energy resources and 1 wild resource. So why that's important is because there's a lot of cards that care about what resources you have available and what resources you can use. Like, for instance, the Superhuman Law Division, which only can be triggered by a mental resource. So, in her base kit, there's only 5 total mental resources that can be used with it. If you're looking at the aggression cards themselves, if you wanted to be able to trigger that, there's only another 4 mental resources in all of aggression to be able to trigger that card. And 3 of them are Chase Them Down, and the other one is Tigra. You could also use the wilds for that, so you do actually have Hellcat, and that's the only other one that you have in the basic cards to be able to trigger that. Okay, so moving on to the actual deck building with aggression, you have a couple different ways you can go. If you're playing solo and you're not being able to rely on having another player in play to have some abilities to back you up, there's a couple different things you have to think about. Every one of the 4 aspects has a card like Combat Training, which is play under a player's control, max 1 per player, and then it buffs a stat. In aggression, that one is Combat Training, and it buffs an attack. In Protection, it buffs a defense. In Leadership, it buffs an ally, and in the last one, I believe it buffs the thwarting ability. In Justice, it buffs thwarting. So if you're playing solo, you probably never want to take all 3, and taking more than 1 is even questionable. So that is the very first thing that you need to consider. The next thing to consider is whether, at least in aggression, whether you want to go full Hulk or not. So Hulk is a 2-cost ally who does 3 damage when he attacks. After he attacks and does his damage, and before the incidental happens, you have a forced response. That forced response has you discard the top card of your deck. If it's a physical damage card, he deals 2 damage to an enemy. If it's a energy resource, he deals 1 damage to everybody, allies and enemies. If it's a mental resource, he discards himself. And if it's a wild energy resource, then he does all of those things. Hulk seems to be best when he can be healed so that you can keep him in play. If you're doing pure aggression, the only way to do that, if you're playing solo, is to play with first aids. The problem is first aids have a mental resource on them. So if you add 3 first aids to your deck, you're adding a 7.5% chance that Hulk is going to off himself anyway. So I think Hulk is better in when you're going to be playing with another person, and that other person is either going to be playing protection, so they're playing med teams, and they can heal Hulk that way, or they're the ones that are playing med first aids and playing a different aspect, and they can heal Hulk for you. So that is another consideration on whether you're playing solo or whether you're playing with another person. And then, all right. So we'll set those 2 cards aside for right now. Looking at the other aggression cards, first thing we have is Power of Aggression. There's 2 of them in the aggression pool. This is the same as all of the other Power of cards that are in all of the other aspects. They're a wild resource, but they're worth 2 when you're paying for a card of that aspect. I don't see any time when you would ever not want that card, 2 of that card in your pool. or in your deck. And then next we have Chase Them Down. It's a thwart. After your hero attacks and defeats an enemy, remove 2 threat from a scheme. This one is curious because I found, especially in solo, when you're playing solo, the villain has such low health pool and the scheme is so low, and you're flipping so few encounter cards that often there's not very many minions in play, and so you're not often even defeating minions. So it's actually rare that you're even seeing a minion, much less defeating one, and then to be able to defeat a minion to remove 2 threat from the scheme. This is another one of those cards where it's like better when there's multiple people and less good when there's just you by yourself. So we'll look at that one near the end. We have Relentless Assault. Hero action, 2 energy, deal 5 damage to a minion if you paid for this card using a fist resource. This attack gains overkill. So again, same deal. Very few minions when you're playing in solo. 3 energy tack team. Comes into play. It's a support. It uses 3 counters. As an action, you can exhaust it to remove 1 attack counter to it to do 3 damage to an enemy. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want 3 of those in your deck if you're playing aggression. It's free damage that sits around in play all the time. 3 Tigra. After she attacks and defeats a minion, heal 1 damage from her. She has 2 attack and 1 thwart and 3 health. Allies are just good. If she does happen to defeat a minion, then she heals. Interesting thing is though, even if she has no damage on her, and her very first attack defeats a minion, the response happens after her damage and her defeating of the minion and before the incidental damage, so she will end up with the 1 damage on her even though she heals before the incidental happens, so she always has 1 damage on her no matter what. And then last we have Uppercut, 3 energy, hero action, deal 5 damage to an enemy, and it has a physical resource on it. So you put those in there. So the absolute ones that you would always put in, there's 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then depending on whether you're playing in solo or whether you're playing in multiplayer, I think you always put at least 1 combat training in. And I can even see the case for playing 2 just because you always want to see it quickly, like early in the game. So let's build for solo first, and then we'll change it, make the changes for multiplayer afterwards. So if we're building for solo, then you absolutely want 1 of each of the double energies. So right now we have 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So there's 29 right there. So that leaves us 11 cards left. So you put 1 Nick Fury, 1 Mockingbird probably. Mockingbird again has a physical resource. Interesting. So what do you guys think in the chat? Do you guys like Haymaker? 2 energy for 3 damage, just flat damage for attack? One Avengers Mansion, 1 Helicarrier. Anybody? I see you in chat. One and 15 is 36, so that leaves 4 cards left. See, this is the problem with the card pool being so small, is that you end up having to worry about subpar choices. So I think with 4 cards left, you're either putting maybe putting 2 Chase Them Downs in there, even just because they have a mental resource, so you can pitch them to Superhuman Law Division for thwarting if you need it. And then the Relentless Assault just in case minions come out. Something like that. And so your solo deck ends up being something along these lines. Here, I can move this camera here. See if this helps at all here. Probably won't. But yeah, so the cards that aren't in there from aggression are one Combat Training, 1 Chase Them Down, 1 Relentless Assault, and 1 Hulk. And then if I were to switch this to go like I'm going to play multiplayer, I'm going to play with some people and I know that there's going to be like some med kits and stuff, some medical teams. Then what I'm going to do, if I'm going to maximize Hulk, okay. If you're going to maximize Hulk because you want him to stay alive as long as possible and you want him to trigger as many times as possible, all right, let me count this and then I'll adjust. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 23 and 15 is 38, so 2 cards. All right. Okay. So if I were going for a build that was going to play multiplayer and its only goal was to keep Hulk out as long as possible and maximize... Yep, Tiger needs to go too. Maximize the damage that Hulk can do. There we go. What I would do is I would take out the Genius, I would take out the Avengers Mansion, and I would take out the Nick Fury, because they all cause Hulk to die. I would take out the 3 Chase Them Downs. I would put the 3 Relentless Assaults in, because there are going to be a lot more minions and you're going to be able to kill them. I would add in all 3 of the combat trainings so that you can increase the attack of all the other players in the team. I would add in the tenacities so that you can restand yourself for a physical resource, which you are going to have a lot of. Leave the 3 Haymakers in, leave the Mockingbird in. So with this build, the only mental resources in the entire deck are the 5 in She-Hulk's base kit, which gives a 15% chance of Hulk killing himself, which I think is probably close to the lowest. Well, it's 22.5 because there's 3 wilds. You'd have to take out the power of aggression to lower it down below 20. Every card is 2.5%. Oh, my audio just cut out? Oh, okay. Thank you for letting me know that. I'm not sure where it cut out. What I was saying was every card in the deck at 40 cards is 2.5% chance when you flip it. So with 5 mental resources and 3 wilds, you're at 22.5% for Hulk to kill himself. If you take out the 2 power of aggressions, then you only have 6. Then you only have 6 cards left that can kill him out of the whole deck. And you can kind of guess the odds if you have some of them in your hand or some of them have already been played. And of course some of them, superhuman strengths and Hellcat are cards that sit and play, so those can be minimized. So yeah, with a deck build like this, you can maximize Hulk. Somebody else could be playing protection and keeping him healed, and Hulk could potentially do a ton of damage every turn. He's either doing 5 or he's doing 4 to the villain every turn. And then of course you have, you know, haymakers, your restanding She-Hulk. Next Friday I'm going to be playing a duo game with one of my guests that come on the stream every so often. This is one of the decks that I'm going to be playing probably just to try it out and see how much damage we can do. So I'll be giving it a test and just kind of see how long we can keep Hulk going. So that'll be interesting. So does anybody have any questions on card choices or why we would be building something a certain way, or when you would be choosing to like cut some of the cards from an aspect, or whether you would just put them all in, stuff like that? Or if anybody has just any deck building questions in general. Yeah, that's what I was saying. This build in particular is terrible in solo. Because Hulk just ends up killing himself after like 1 or 2 turns. Just before this, I had a different build where of aggression where I had no Hulk, and I had Nick Fury and an Avengers Mansion and a Genius and Tigra and 2 Chase Them Downs in the deck, and no Tenacities, -1 Relentless Assault, -1 Combat Training, and -1 something else. And that would be for when you're playing solo, because this build is only good if you have at least one partner who's there to help you support Hulk and keep you and Hulk going, because you basically want to stay in hero mode the entire time, and basically you want She-Hulk and regular Hulk just swinging for the villain the entire game. And if you can't do that, then this build is not good. If you want something that you can play in solo, then you have to make some concessions, and one of those is that you can't play Hulk. Yeah. So that's why I did it in 2 different builds. First I did like, if I was playing solo, what would I do? And the first thing I did is you can't play Hulk, because he's just going to kill himself. And cards like Combat Training, you don't want to play Combat Training. You don't want to play more than 2 at the most, and probably more than 1 in solo. And when you're playing solo, you don't want to play like Relentless Assault, the cards that can only target minions. And Aggression has more of these than some other ones, but this is a good example. Cards that target only minions in solo play, the problem is that you only have one player getting 1 encounter card per turn. So the number of encounter cards that get dealt out per round is so much lower than when you're playing with more people. And the number of minions percentage-wise in the encounter deck is so low that these cards that can only target a minion get so much less value. They're really, really bad, I think, in solo play. And I think they're the first card you cut. I think I would rather have Haymakers in the deck in solo than Relentless Assault. Even though Haymaker only does 3 damage for 2, and Relentless Assault deals 5 damage for 2? Yes, absolutely. If you're playing against Ultron, you're talking a completely different story, because you can guarantee that there are always going to be minions on the board. And by that same token, if you're going to be playing against Ultron, and you're going to be playing solo against Ultron, Hulk's value rises, and you might want to change your build up a little bit to go more of an energy focused build with Hulk, just so that he could spam single damage out across everything. And it may even be worth trying running 3 first aids and Hulk and trying to keep him alive yourself. The problem is, if you flip a first aid with Hulk, then he's just going to kill himself. He's like, you run at him with bandages and he just like backhands you and runs away. So he's not down for that. So yeah, the villain definitely changes the way you build, and that's one thing I think some people aren't focusing on enough when they're talking about deck building in their videos and in their articles and stuff, is they're like, hey, here's the deck, you should try it. And they don't talk about, you know, how does this change when I'm playing by myself? How does this change when I'm playing with one other person? How does this change when I'm playing with 3 other people? You know, how does this change when I'm playing against Rhino or Ultron? Because the dynamics of the villain deck change how a hero deck plays by a lot. You know, if you're going to be swarmed by minions, solo protection is not very good, because you can only defend reasonably once per turn, maybe twice per turn. Yeah, in general, I think it depends on, so the question was talking about Helicarrier versus Helicarrier and Mansion, and how many to put in your deck in general. And the idea is, I think it depends on a couple things. One is which hero you're playing, and how fast that hero gets through their deck. How fast you need to see the Mansion or the Helicarrier, and what the energy that it produces does to your deck. So Mansion is a mental resource, and Helicarrier is a physical resource. So for instance, in this deck, I could easily see putting in 2 Helicarriers, and it's perfectly fine, and you don't have to worry about it, even in the version with Hulk, because he doesn't care, and more physical resources is great. But if you put in 2 Mansions, then you're just asking for Hulk to kill himself. In fact, in the version that I did with Hulk, I had no Mansions, because you don't want Hulk to kill himself. Now, when you're talking about like Iron Man, Iron Man, between Tony Stark's ability, plus aggressive mulliganing, plus his high hand size, you can get through your entire deck in 3 or maybe 4 rounds. And because that's the case, you probably only need 1 Mansion in your deck, and maybe 1 Helicarrier, because you get through it so fast. And even if you end up having to use it on your first pass to create a tech, like you're thinning your deck, you're going to get back through your deck like super quick, and it's going to be no problem. But some of the other characters, like, I actually think Black Panther has maybe some of the most trouble like churning through his deck, or Spider-Man. Spider-Man is very fair and very steady about how he goes through his deck. He doesn't really have like great ways of just churning through his deck. So I think he's more in line with having like 2 copies of each. So I hope that makes sense. So another thing I think right now people are falling into the easy habit of just going like, hey, these double energies are great. We're gonna put one of each in every single deck. And I think for a lot of decks, I think that's fine. But I think as we go forward and we get more cards in each aspect, and those cards care more about the types of energy that we're using and the types of energy that show up in decks, and we get more cards like Hulk and like Superhuman Law Division that care about the specific type of energy that we're using. I think it's going to be a much harder choice to say, oh yeah, let's include all 3 of these. I think that's not going to be the case. Even though, you know, 1 free energy is great, and I'm glad they did max 1 per deck to make it so like, hey, we're not just going to do, you know, 3 of each of these in everybody's decks and, you know, just have a ton of like bursty turns with these double energies. I think it's something to keep an eye out for and something to think about, that you don't always want these. And I think some people, especially when you're doing like Iron Man Justice decks and stuff like that, where you're really focusing on his Repulsor Blast or whatever, where you're flipping 5 cards and you want them all to be energy cards, and you end up flipping a Strength and a Genius when you're doing that. Think really hard about including why you included those in your deck, because yes, it's great on the first turn when you can pop out a piece of tech with them because they're double energy, but when they're messing up your draws or your flips, because including these 2 cards in your 40 card deck is a 5% chance to mess up on a flip. So it's definitely something to think about on your builds. Does anybody else have any other questions about deck building in general? Or about actually just, or any other questions about Champions? If you have any rules questions or anything like that? Okay. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for watching. My plan is this Friday or Saturday, one or the other, to do some solo plays on stream with some of these decks. And then, like I said, next week I'm going to be doing on Friday I'm going to be doing a duo play with one of my friends. and I'm going to be both teaching him the game, and we'll be doing duo. So that'll be fun. So if you have questions about rules and timing and stuff like that, that would be a good one to jump in on. I've also got some promos and stuff that I will be giving out once I get to 50 followers. So if you do like this kind of stuff, follow me. I don't just do Champions. I do Versus, I do other card games, I do other board games. All my content is board and card game related. That's primarily the stuff I like. I also have a YouTube channel where all of this stuff is also streamed to. And yeah, so thank you. Thank you guys for watching.